Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeremy Woodward, also known as Ironheart Jeremy. Now, I'd like to tell you guys and share the story of how heart failure saved my life. But more importantly, I would like to ask each and every one of you in the audience tonight what step you can take forward that will change your life, those around you, and your community. For each one of us in here, it's very unique. It does not have to be something that everybody else is doing. This is unique to you. Now, for some of you, it might be signing up for a race. Maybe you want to do that 5K, maybe you want to run that half marathon, or get crazy and run a marathon. Who knows? For some of you, it may be sending that email off for that new job or to start that dream business that you've always wanted. And for others, maybe it's just cultivating a new relationship in your life. For me, I was born with a congenital heart defect. What this means is that I was born with a bicuspid aortic heart valve. Now, 1% of the population every single year is born with a congenital heart defect. And for my bicuspid aortic heart valve, what it meant is instead of having 3 little flaps or cusps that help facilitate the blood flow out into the body, I only had 2. So I knew from early on that I was already going to be at a disadvantage for certain things. But I went on my early teens, being very active, played sports, played basketball, was into karate, did everything that I could. Probably everything that I shouldn't have been doing, looking back on it now. But knowing that I had that, I also felt that I was invincible and that nothing would ever happen to me. Now, I was told that at some point down the road, if there's a problem, I am definitely going to know about it. I was literally walking around with a ticking time bomb right here on my chest. So in 2000, I turned 22 years old. All of a sudden, I became symptomatic. Flu-like symptoms. And then those flu-like symptoms turned into infections and black and blues all over my body and in joints. I had no idea what was going on. I tried to power through it, super stubborn. Ask my wife, she'll tell you. But I knew that something was wrong. So we got some guidance. They did an exam, it's called the transesophageal echo. They stick this camera down your mouth, and they're able to look at the heart. And they were able to tell that, yeah, he's right, there is something wrong. I had an abscess, but the size of a pea sitting on that already diseased heart valve. I had two choices, 2 options at this point. We either do nothing and hope for the best, or I get it treated immediately. Because if I didn't get it treated, that abscess could burst. And if that bursts, then it's lights out for good. So, went down to Boston. They did some more exams, and they realized, yep, got to have this replaced as soon as possible. The antibiotics, the treatment's not working. Now is your time. So I was given an option. I can either have a mechanical valve put in or a tissue valve. The advantages of a mechanical valve is that I'll never have to deal with this again, hopefully. But I'm going to be on blood thinners. The other side of it is you can get a tissue valve. The only thing with a tissue valve, you're only going to get a 7 to 15 year lifespan out of it. So naturally I said, I'm going to roll the dice here and hope for the best. So I went with a tissue valve. It was actually a donor valve. From my understanding, it was from a woman in Boston who had been in a car accident who decided to donate. So I got her valve. Well, the docs were right. They said it was going to be about 7 years. And I became symptomatic again. But this time the symptoms were a little different. It wasn't an infection. There was no black and blues. This time it was severe fatigue. I mean, I had to take naps twice a day. I wish I could still take naps twice a day. But not under those circumstances. But under this situation, now all of a sudden, a month into this, now I'm gaining weight, trying to figure out what's going on. I'm normally about 175 to 180 pounds. And all of a sudden, I jump up to 190 pretty quickly. And then it was 195, and then I crossed over 200. I attributed it to the start of a new career. to just getting married, new stresses in our life. But man, I was definitely wrong. My wife and I, we went up to a hospital up north to see if we get some answers. And they said, yeah, your organs are definitely shutting down, and we need to immediately remove your gallbladder. I thought, okay, great, let's do this. I'll be good. And, out riding bikes and doing all that stuff soon after. Well, we go in, they prep me, and just a few hours before the surgery, an angel pops out and says, no way, can't do any surgery, can't do anything on you. Because if we do, you will die on the table, there's no doubt. So they scrapped that. We got discharged. Really no answers other than we'll see in a couple weeks. My wife and I, we knew in our heart we did not have a couple of weeks. Now, at this point, normally 175, 180 pounds, now I'm over 210 pounds. I can't walk. My skin is so stretched. I'm absolutely miserable. I haven't slept. My resting heart rate is over 100 beats a minute. Something's up. So my wife throws me in the car, says we're going to Boston. We drive down. It was a summer morning. It was hot. Normally the trip is about an hour long. Took us about 3 hours, I think. We arrive. We call the team. They tell us where to go. Now we're over at Tufts Medical Center. So we park in the garage. It's only about 100 yards, 150 yards from the car to the entrance to the building, to the medical center. Now, that 150, 200 yards was the longest 200 yards of my life. We got to the door, and I had to get a wheelchair because I couldn't walk. I was out of breath. I think it must have taken me a good 20 minutes just to get from the car to the door. We go in. The team immediately sees me. Doctor walks in. He looks at me without any physical examination or anything. He looks at me, and he can see my neck, my carotid artery is just pulsing like crazy. He abruptly leaves, says, I'll be back in a minute. Now he comes in with a whole team from Tufts Medical Center, from their cardiothoracic unit. And he says, okay, you're lucky to be here because probably within the next 24 to 48 hours, you would have gone to sleep and probably not gotten up. You are that close to death. You are in the worst stage of heart failure. So me thinking, okay, well, we can get through this. This is going to be like an outpatient thing, right? No way. So I had asked them, I said, can we just leave? Can I come back? Like, no, because if you leave, you probably are not coming back. So they immediately started with therapies. They started with diuretics, which meant that I had to pee out all this fluid. And that's all I did for like a week. And I think I lost about 50 pounds of fluid. But now I can walk. It was crazy. My wife would walk in and she would look at me and she'd be like, oh my gosh, your legs are smaller. Now, mind you, I couldn't see my feet. My feet were huge before. My legs were huge. I would throw on a pair of sweatpants and they looked like cycling tights on me. It's crazy. I wish we had pictures. I wish we had an iPhone at the time. But I made a declaration while I was in the hospital. This is my first step forward. So the night before my second open heart surgery, I asked one of the staff to take me for a walk. So we go for a walk. So I'm hooked up to 1 million wires. We go up a flight of stairs. I think I only went up 3 flights. I couldn't get up the stairs. But I said, okay, today I have to challenge myself to the hardest thing I can possibly do, because that is what is going to get me through. I've got to take that next step forward, whatever that's going to be. So after a couple of hours of thinking about this, between doing this and dinner time of, amazing hospital, no salt food in the cardiothoracic unit, it's delicious, amazing. I said, I'm going to do the hardest thing. I am going to do the Ironman triathlon. Now, I told my wife, shared that with her. She thought I was absolutely crazy. The staff at the hospital was like, okay, when we get him through surgery, he is going to need an evaluation. Well, for those of you who are not familiar with Ironman, the Ironman triathlon consists of a 2.4-mile swim, a 112-mile bike ride, and then now that you're warmed up, you're going to run a marathon of 26.2 miles. So basically from Hopkinton, Massachusetts, right to the finish line at the Boston Marathon. And I became obsessed with it. I was like, I am doing this. My first step started there. We got through surgery. We had a few little hiccups. It's okay. We got through it. Because I had a healthy and fit heart prior, that is what kept me alive. So my training started the day after in the ICU. It was 1 lap around the ICU, then it was 2 laps and 3 laps. Well, about 3 weeks later, I was discharged from the hospital. And that is when the journey began. 3 years later, from when I had that second open heart surgery, and it was almost to the day of when I was admitted to the hospital, I crossed the finish line of the Ironman triathlon. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. The training, the time commitment, everything. But like I said before, I'd become obsessed. I'd become obsessed with taking that step. And I also wanted to give back to the community. So I fundraised for an organization, and I enjoyed it, and I felt like I have a new lease on life to be able to get out there and do these things. Now, one of my most memorable experiences throughout this whole process has been running for Tedy Bruschi's team. Now, I've had the opportunity to run for his team, raising money for stroke and heart disease awareness. It's been one of the most awesome things in my life. There's a very iconic hill not too far from the doors of this theater called Heartbreak Hill. It's part of the Boston Marathon course. It is kind of ironic, though, that it's called Heartbreak Hill. Because let me tell you, I've had the opportunity of running up that hill in 5 Boston marathons, and I will never, ever let that hill break me, ever. In fact, when I get on that hill, I make it a point to run. I don't care how tired my legs are, I will run because I think back to when I was here in Boston at the hospitals getting treated for heart failure and heart surgery and everything. Now, over the years, because of those steps forward, when I crossed the finish line of Ironman, I became the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, meaning I was the 1% of the population was born with a congenital heart defect, 1% of the population, or less than 1% of the population, that has finished an Ironman triathlon, and 1% of the population that starts the Ironman with a heart defect. So, 1% of the 1% of the 1%. It's kind of crazy to think about. But I also needed to reclaim my purpose. And it started with taking the step. And I've loved the journey. It's been amazing. I wake up every day with a huge sense of gratitude and appreciation. Yes, not all days are easy. And yes, I have to manage being on blood thinners and taking Coumadin and all of that stuff. But it gives me the chance to be up on the stage here today. If I didn't take that step forward and send that email off, I wouldn't be here sharing the story with you. So, as I said earlier in this talk, I hope that every one of you tonight, when you do leave here, think about what that step would be. What is it? Is it that email, that new job, the new relationship, whatever it might be? It could change your life, it could change those around you, and have a massive impact on your community. Thank you.